Hi, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Craig Clapman, and I'm the president of Mekorma. And today I'm going to talk to you about Mekorma Multi-Batch Management, which is the new premium feature from Mekorma MICR. So before I go into the demo and show you what it does, I want to tell you a little bit about what it does. What multi-batch management does is automate several processes in the outgoing payment part of the AP process. Those processes include selecting invoices for payment, or what's known as building a batch in Dynamics GP. It automates the requesting of approvals if you're using the Mekorma MICR workflow. It automates the printing of edit lists if you want to print edit lists after you build your batch of payments. It automates the printing of checks, the generation of the EFT remittances along with the emailing, posting those checks and EFTs, generating the EFT files, and generating the SafePay files. And it automates these processes across multiple batches, across multiple companies at the same time. So you could have 2, 4, or 100 batches, and they could be in one or many companies. And in a single process, you can build your batches or print your checks or any of the other processes listed here. Now, with that, let me show you how it works. Here we are in Dynamics GP. And before I start showing you multi-batch management, I want to show you what I have in my system to start with. So here is the payables batch entry screen that we all know. And if I use the lookup, I can see that right now there are no check batches in my system. There are 3 batches, 2 manual payment batches, and 1 payables transaction entry batch. But there are no computer check batches that exist in this company. So what multi-batch management does is it will build my computer check batches for me. So I open the action board and I click my process, and I'm going to choose the end of the week process, and I'm going to then hit process. Now, as you can see, there's a progress window here, and it's showing me what's happening, okay? It's showing me what batch is being built, what batch is going to be built next, and what batch was just built. This process that I chose is going to build a total of 12 payment batches, and it's going to build them in 3 separate companies. As you just saw, multi-batch management logged out of the first company I was in and logged into the second company, which it's doing now. And now that it's in the second company, it's going to start building the batches there. Now keep in mind, I'm not doing anything on my computer. All I did was hit the process button, and this is all happening by multi-batch management. That's what I mean when I say it automates the process of building batches. It knows what batches I want to have built by the criteria I've entered into it previously. And now it is going and building those payment batches for me. As you can see, it is now logging into the third company and building batches in that company. It doesn't have to be used in multi-company environments. It can be used in a single company where you have many, many checkbooks, and it can build batches in your separate checkbooks. It's just, however you do a lot of batches, it can build them for you in Dynamics GP. So we are in our third company, and we are almost done here. And it is now going to log back into the original company where I started work to take me back to where I was. And we'll see what happened. Here is a report that tells us that 4 batches were built in balanced business. There was an EFT batch and a check batch, another EFT batch, and another check batch. Then in the Complete Solutions Company, 4 batches were also built, and the same thing in Fabricam. Now in the case of this demo data, I'm using similar criteria. I'm actually using the same build ID across my companies, which you can do. You can create a build ID that says pay everything due in 7 days. And then you can say, and I want to do it out of this checkbook in this company and this other checkbook in another company. Or you can have different build IDs. Here I have 3. A utility build ID that pays my utility vendors, an employee build ID that pays my employee reimbursements out of AP, and 2 build IDs that pay things that are due in 7 days. And that process to build these 12 batches in 3 different companies took 1 minute and 56 seconds, as you can see at the bottom of the report. Now, once your batches are built, the next thing you will do is you'll want to print those checks and create those EFT remittances. Of course, if you're using an approval process, then you would approve them first, and then you would come into this screen here that I'm showing you, which is the same action board. I'm just switching the action on the menu here to print checks and EFTs, and those are those 12 batches. Now, if we go back, just to show you, if we go back to our batches screen and we look it up, if you remember from earlier, there were no check batches. Now there are 4 check batches that were built. And those can be brought up in your edit checks window or select checks or whatever you want before you print them if you want to edit them. There are 12 batches in this window because Multi-Batch Management also built batches in 2 other companies. And I'd have to go into those companies to see them through the GP screens. But with Multi-Batch Management, I can see them all here in one screen while I'm in a single company. So to print the checks and to create the EFT remittances, I would simply mark all and then hit process. And again, it is printing the checks with the right MICR information, and it is creating the EFTs remittances in the separate companies for each batch that I marked. And it will go through all 12 batches and do that. And while it's doing that, let's go back to our PowerPoint. And I would like to tell you a couple more things about multi-batch management. One is it respects all the business rules for selecting, printing, posting, and company access. So if you are not allowed to print checks in GP by your security setup, you will not be allowed to do it in multi-batch management. There's no further setup or security that you need to create. It reads the Dynamics GP security and only allows access to those functions that you could do in GP without multi-batch management. It also respects the company access. So even though it works across companies, if you don't have access to those companies, you will not see or be able to manipulate batches in those companies. It will only show you and let you work with the companies that you have access to. As I said earlier, those batches that are built are just like any batch you would build in GP. They can be edited, approved. You can take things in or out of them in any of the standard windows. There's nothing special or procedure that you need to go through. And again, they can go through the Mekorma MICR or even the GP approval system. And if you were using an approval process, when you opened up the action board and chose the print checks, process checks and EFT option, you would find that the batches that were not approved were not able to be marked and could not be printed. You would be blocked from doing that. Okay, let's go back to GP and see what's going on there. It looks like it's logging into one of the companies, and let's see which one it is. It's logging into Fabricam, which is our 3rd company in our list, and it is printing the checks and processing the EFTs there. So you can see in that action board on the window, it only lists 4 batches now. The other 8 have already been processed. So in that amount of time it took for me to go to that slide and explain those few things, it's already printed 4 batches of checks and processed 4 batches of EFTs, including creating the remittances. And now it's on the final 4. And this should be done in just a few seconds. And we will be then again returned to the company in which we started work. And here we are logging into Balanced Business, which was the company that I began in. And so it's bringing me back there. And the process is over. And as you notice, there was a pause button on this process bar. So if it was a particularly long process, I could pause it and then resume it if I wanted to. Let's see how long that took to print 6 batches of checks and process 6 batches of EFTs. Well, that took 3 minutes and 17 seconds. And that you can see that down at the bottom here. A total of 12 batches were done in 3 minutes and 17 seconds. And all I had to do was mark all and choose process. I didn't have to bring up each batch in the print checks window. I didn't have to wait for it to be done and bring up the next one, log in the next company. None of those steps were required anymore. I simply brought up the action board, chose process checks and EFTs, marked the batches, and hit process. When it comes time to post, you simply change the action to post. And your batches will appear here. Now, you may notice that there are only 6 batches appearing here, and there's a reason for that. You'll also notice that they are all check batches. That's because we have options in multi-batch management, and those options allow you to post EFT immediately after print or send. Okay, you could also generate the EFT file immediately after posting, or generate the SafePay file. So because I have the post EFT immediately after print or send, then those batches are not here and I don't have to post them. So those were already posted as part of that 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Other options you have are to request approvals automatically if you're using the Mekorma MICR approval, or to print edit lists if you'd rather use a GPU approval system along with edit lists. You can print your EFT remittances and or send the documents in email, print them if they cannot be sent. As I said, you can generate EFT files after posting and generate the SafePay files after posting if you're using those features automatically. Those reports that I showed you earlier, you can have them emailed to any email you want. If you were doing a long process, if you had 100 or 200 or 300 batches and it might take more than 3 minutes and you wanted to walk away from your computer, you could very well do that and have that email sent to you, get it on your phone or however you get your email to let you know that the process is now done and here's a report of what happened. So those are some of the options we have with multi-batch management. As we saw earlier, the process to post is very, very similar to the other 2 actions. You would simply mark all and click process. I'm not going to do that here since we've seen it already twice and it's just the same thing again. You get the process window and it goes through your 3 companies or however much and it posts your batches. With generate EFTs, it's very similar. In this case, you have a chance to change your transmission date or your settlement date by checkbook. And there are 3 checkbooks here with transactions. You mark those, put in the dates you want, and then you would generate the EFT files for you to send to your bank. And very similarly, it does that with SafePay. In this case, you can change the last upload date and the upload cutoff date. And there would be amounts here, but they only come in after posting, which we didn't do in this demo. So that is how multi-batch management works. That's what the process of printing checks now becomes and building your check batches. Going into the action board, choosing a process ID, and selecting process. And you build your batches. You mark your batches, you print your batches. It's as simple as that, day after day or week after week, however often you cut checks. Now let's look at some of the underpinnings of it so we can see how it's put together. I've referred to the process ID. This one we call end of week. So process ID is made up of the various build IDs, which are the criteria I use, and applied to checkbooks in companies for a payment type. So I've used the utility build ID 3 times here. I've applied it to the first bank checkbook in 3 different companies for EFTs because I pay my utilities by EFT. My employees I cut checks for, and I pay them out of the Flex Benefits account in this company and the Uptown Trust account in these other 2 companies. Same build ID, but applied to different checkbooks and different companies for checks, and so on. You can group together as many as you want in a process, so you can be building 100 or more batches at a time. Here is what a build ID looks like. A build ID, as you can see, the build maintenance screen looks very much like the select checks window. And this is where you would put in your filters, such as vendor class, and you could select whatever classes you have in there. You can do all your Australian vendors, for instance, and insert that. You can say, okay, and then I'm going to pay those out of a certain checkbook, maybe an Australian dollars checkbook. You can do it by due date or discount date. And this is a very neat feature because with multi-batch management, you have the ability to set your due date or discount date as a relative date. So you might say, I want everything that's due in 10 calendar days from the user date, and then you could insert that. So you don't have to pick a specific date. It will figure out the date based on the date you're processing or the user date you've set. And the same is true with discount date. You could also base it on business days. If you don't want it to be calendar days, it could be business days. You can do one check per vendor or one check per invoice, just like you can on the regular select checks window. You can even utilize the assign by checkbook features in Mekorma MICR, select by vendor checkbook or by voucher checkbook to automatically match the checkbook that's been assigned to a voucher to the checkbook that's the batch is being built for, and all the other functions that are on your select checks window. And that's what goes into a build ID. And I'm going to close this, and I'm not going to save that. And you can see then that you've built your criteria, applied them to checkbooks and EFTs, checkbooks in companies for checks and EFTs. And in version 2016 and above, you can also do credit card batches here too. So that's the setup. There's not much more to it. If you're using binary stream multi-entity management, then there's a build capability in that, and you would not use multi-batch management for that. You would just use the printing and posting and the other features, EFT files and SafePay files. The only other setup there is indicating which companies you want to use by enabling them for MMM, and anything that you want to use as a test company. So if you mark something as a test company, you can play with it and test the software all you want without activating it and without being charged. Even after you activate it, if it's marked as a test company, you won't be charged. The checks will not be negotiable and the EFT files will not be usable, but you can see how it functions and test it and make sure it works in your environment here in the multi-batch management setup window. This is also where you would go to activate. My button says update payment because I already activated it. If you had not already activated it, there would be an activate button here, and you could activate that feature. There's a billing activity button, and this will tell you how many batches you have processed in the history, so you can see what the costs are and what the volume of usage is. And that is multi-batch management. It does require Mekorma MICR, and you need to have a valid Mekorma MICR license, and then you would enable this on top of that. And that takes us to the end of our webinar, and I appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoyed it and found out what you needed to know. Thank you very much.